Good day all. Today we'll be looking at block diagram reduction rules. Block diagram is just the pictorial representation of symbols and transfer functions of components you have in mind. Now, before we go into the matter of today, I would like to first of all talk about the components of a block diagram. Number one will be the lines. Now, the lines signifies the direction of your signal. They signify your signals, and they normally have either an arrow head signifying the direction, the path, the way they are flowing. This signifies what? Signal. We also have the transfer function box, which is the block itself that contains, this is a block that contains the transfer functions that we know of. It represents the transfer function. And one thing with block diagram, or one unique thing about block diagram is when a signal passes through a block, the product at the output will always be the product of whatever this signal is to whatever this G is. Our signal normally do have let me say a sign. I can put it here, arrow of S or A. Anytime I choose to call in alphabet, I choose to put there. Let me say it's just representing our reference input signal. So as this signal enters into this box and as it's coming out, the product at the output part will be the product of R and G, that is RG. You will see something like this. If this is R going into G, the output here will be what? RG. Now another component again I will also like to another component again I would like to talk about is the summing points. Now the summing points, at the summing point, that is where your algebraic sum or algebraic additions occur. You can have it to be either plus plus, and the arrangement is not constant. Sometimes you might see your plus here. The position of your sign depends on where your arrow or your signal or your line is coming from. If there is an inward, we only assign sign to lines that have arrowhead, going in. So the product of this the summation of these two signals, let's say arrow and B, the product the summation of them will result to R plus B. This enters here and becomes what? Plus R. This enters here and becomes what? Plus B. So we assign the signs to wherever we see our arrow sign. So in case if our arrow sign decides is now here and this changes to here, yeah, then what our sign will now be here, making our output here to be R plus what? B. So as you can see, the one with the arrowhead going in is the ones that have sign, is the section of or segment of the circle that has sign attached to them. These other two free signs are places that you can tap your signal from. I also like to also say that it's not compulsory it must be 2 going in. It can be 3. It can be 3 going in. And if it is 3, just make sure that your arrow is pointing what? Inwardly. Now your summing points can either be plus plus, plus minus, minus plus. It's can be plus or minus. That's what I'm trying to say. It can be what? Plus or what? Minus. So it doesn't matter the configuration or the way it is being represented as. What your main focus is the signs in the box. Mainly you know them. For instance, if you're using this, if we're using this fourth one, and let's say the sign is entering in and entering in here, we have our output here. Let's say here is R and here is B. We have our output here to be R minus R minus B. That will be our output here. R is going in, it takes the minus. B is going in, it takes the minus. The output to then become minus R minus B. Now, this is for your summing points. Other component again that is also used in the block diagram is what you call the branching point or the pick off points. The pick off points. Now, the pick off points is more like kind of your signals is duplicated into 2. Let's say if R is going into here, mainly it gets to this place, R will continue going here, it will also continue going to this one. So you kind of, while having one signal, you kind of duplicate it. That's what your branching point does, or your pick off point does. While this is your summing points. So let's move into the matter of today. So we have a lot of rules in block diagram reduction. The first one is that has to do with the transfer function or the box. Whenever you have your boxes or your transfer function connected in series like this, you can call here G1, G2, and this is the direction of our what? Signal. Now if R is coming here, it gets to this point, it becomes what? RG1. It crosses there, it becomes what? It becomes RG1, G2. So that's what we'll be seeing at our output. And in case if I forgot to say it in earlier, because I forgot to say it in earlier, we have 2 loops. We have the open and close loop. The open loop, you will have your input going into your transfer function box there to your output. But for this is for your open loop. This is for your open loop. For your closed loop, you have 2 cases for that. We have the feedback closed loop and just your ordinary closed loop. For your ordinary closed loop, you just have your branching points. Just have your branching points just like this. This for your just your closed loop. Now another form of closed loop is your feedback closed loop. This one is the one that has another transfer function on the feedback part. That's another transfer function on the feedback part. Sorry, I made a mistake here. There's always a summing point here. There's summing points. There's a summing point here. So it has another transfer function at the distance, at the feedback loop. This is your feedback loop. This is your feedback loop. So let's say that you're passing a signal. It gets to this it gets to your transfer function G, multiplies and give you your output here. Now this your branching point will also tap what the output is and then feed it back to your input to check if it aligns. If it aligns, it determines what the next output will be. Over here, let's say that when it passes through the transfer function, our output is kind of in a different unit from our input signal. When it comes over here, it kind of converts it to be in the same unit with this guy, so they can simply what add and subtract to give us another error that will determine what our output will be. Another thing I also forgot to say is the addition or the algebraic summation that occurs in your summing point normally results to what you call your error signal. Your error signal normally represented as E. So at this point, what you have is your what error signal when it has gone through your feedback loop and has done its algebraic summation here. It gives you what your error. The error determines the next and what the next output will be. So that is how the system keeps correcting itself till it gets a particular input that it gets a particular output that it wants. So that's for that. Now back to the business in hand. We are talking about the reduction rule. Now in case if you are connected in series, when your signal passes through your transfer function, this is what it forms. Passes through the transfer function, this is what it forms. Now another way you can also write this is simply just joining the kind of multiplying the two functions together and say G1 G2, and you see still at the output you still have G1 G2 here. So this is at least a common rule, one of the common rule in reduction, in block diagram reduction. Another rule again that we should also look at is that of the parallel connected transfer function. So let's say we have our transfer function G connected to our summing points. Now this normally confuse students, like they don't know the difference between the parallel connected transfer function and the one that is a feedback loop. For instance, this is not a feedback loop. This is not a feedback loop. This, instead of you having a feedback loop, at this input part you had your signal being duplicated here. So they're kind of traveling in parallel, then coming to your summation, so let me say at this point, let's say if our R is here, R continues here, R continues in this part. As it crosses through this your transfer function, here becomes RG, here becomes RH. Then as it passes through this, it becomes what? RG, because of the plus is in front, we don't write it, and minus RH because of this minus here. So that's what our output is. So this is not a feedback loop. A feedback loop. This is not a feedback loop. That of a feedback loop, this is how it looks like. Though I've drawn it before, I would just like to repeat it for clarity's sake. So for this, you have your output. It is you're tapping from your what, your output back to the what input. But for this is your input that is duplicating into 2, and then summing themselves at this summing points. But that of the feedback hole, it is from your output that you are tapping your this thing from, your signal from. Why that of the parallel connected is that you're tapping it from your what, your inputs. So they are not what, the same. Another way you can also know it is that the direction of their arrows. If you notice, when if you say these two are in parallel, the direction of this signal here is towards the direction, while that of this is towards this direction. So they are kind of opposite. There's a kind of a circular part here, but that the one of these parallel parts are kind of following the same paths. See, this one is moving like this is also moving like this, but this is moving like this, the other one is what, coming back. So this is different from this. In this case, you might not even have this the same output. Let us try and see what our output to be here. So let's say here will be R. So when we it passes through here, whatever we get here has to be E. Let us call it E. E, which is our error signal, which has as the product of whatever we got from the output. So we can't call it R or this thing now. So let's or any other signal now is just E. So let's say our E is going in here. As it comes out here, it becomes what? EG. Now that EG is what is being tapped from here, and when it crosses it becomes EGH. It comes back here, subtracts itself from the R, and you end up having R minus what? EGH. So you see, as the loop keeps going, you see, if you go again, it will keep another value. You get another value here. You get another value. Keep getting another value because of what that is how the system is designed to kind of correct itself. So that's for that. So for us to treat this one that is connected in parallel, how we normally, as you can see, this is our output. So how we normally rewrite it is this. We say that we simply just add the two words transfer functions together, G plus what? H. But in this case it will be what? Minus H. So it will be a complete representation of this. So as your R goes in, it comes out with what? R brackets G minus H, and opening this bracket is also the same as what? R G minus R H, matching this. So you can, so long you are looking at your sign determines whether it's going to be a plus or a what? A minus. So in case if you have parallel paths, and first look at your what? Your summing point. It determines whether it's going to be a plus or a minus. What I mean is this: if this is plus, this will be plus. if this is minus, this will be minus. So it determines how you add or subtract when you want to reduce your block diagram. So this and this are what are equal. So in case if you have something like this, you can reduce it to this. So let's continue. Another rule again is that of the summing points. Now our summing points can either be moved in front or behind. You can move it in front of a transfer function box. You can move it in front. You can move it in front. You can also move it behind. So we'll be having two cases. This is case A and what? Case B. And in our case B, we have our transfer function block ahead of our what? Our summing points. So let's say this is G and let's say plus plus. So in case if we are trying to move, okay, let's first of all find the output of this. Now if this is R, when it's, and maybe let's say the signal coming from here is X, when they add up we have R plus what? X. When it passes through this, you have G times what? R plus X, which is similar to G R plus G X. So this is our output. Now we want to find another way we can do this to get the same output. So for us to move our summing points in front, this is what we'll be having. These are our transfer function, and then our summing points. Our summing points. Now we add another transfer function here, and we call it what? G. Remember, this is not among. This is where our this thing is stopping. So it's for case 2. So we call here what? G. The same G. The same what? G. And remember that signal that was coming in here was what? X. So when it passes through this, you have what? G what? X. This, what was coming in here was what? R. When it passes here, it becomes what? GR or RG. And you know how you decide to write it. So I want it to look like that. Now, summing together, you're now having what? GR plus what? GX. So that is, you can see our output here what? The same. So the idea is when you're moving your summing point in front, that same transfer function that it has overtaken, add it to the feedback signal or the feedback loop signal. Just add it back to add it back to it. So this allows us to have a mobility while working with our transfer, our block diagram. We can change some things in order to reduce our block diagram. Now over here, for us to move our summing points maybe ahead of this our transfer function, let's say here is R, it will become, let's say RG, So let's call here our x, and here will then be rg plus what? X. Now let's say we want to move this summing points ahead. So we have our summing points ahead. Plus and plus. Now we also add another box, but our transfer function will change to what? 1 over this same what? G. So to help kind of differentiate it from this, let's not be just using G. Let me say I'm changing this to H, and I want to take this forward. I simply do what? Move it forward. This is the one that was previously in front. Now here will be what? H. Here will be what? H. So we had that here was what? X. Here was what? R. We had that here was X, here was R. Now going into here, we have what? R plus what? This is X times 1 over H. We'll be having what? X over what? H. Adding up, we have R plus X over what? H. Passing through this box, we're having what? R, H. The H will cancel this H, or I can still do it like this. R plus X H multiplied by what? H. H multiplied by this is what? RH. H multiplied by this is what? Just what? X. So you can see that your two what? Attributes are what? The same. So that's for your summing points. When you want to move it in front, the feedback loop, add it what? You and the same transfer function. But if you're moving it behind, you divide. That's for what? For your summing points. Now the next one we'll be looking at our what? Our branch points. Now for our branching points, we have case, the first case, and we're also going to be having the second case, where we have that our brush is in front and we want to move it behind. Our branching points. We want to move our branching point what? Behind. So this for the first case. Now for the first case, in order to move our branch what? Forward, we'll do the opposite of what we'll do for the summing. We'll do the opposite of what we do for the summing points. Which is what? 1 over what? G. So for the branching point or the takeoff points, when we are moving in front, our transfer function will add a transfer function which is what? 1 over this one. 1 over what? This one. So let's say that our output here is, our input is R. Going in here, we have R over here. We have R over here. This is, so we're going to be having two inputs in this case, two output at this case. We'll be having two output at this case. So the other R will continue and end up with what? R what? G. Coming over here, we have what? R. Going in here becomes what? RG. RG does what? Continues. And that RG also comes down here because this is also a branching point. As it passes through this, you have what? Rg multiplied by what? 1 over what? G, giving us what? R. So you can see that our R still remains our R, while our Rg still continues at what? Rg. As for the what? The first case. For the first case. Now for the second case, we have that R to be our input. As it passes through this, you have what? Rg. Then as it's going down here, it becomes what? Rg what? Rg. Now, another way we can, if we are trying to kind of take it in front, if we take it in front, this is what it will become. No, sorry. So as this passes this, here becomes what? R. Sorry, I'm not done. We will still add the transfer function here, which is what? G. So while the depth of the summing point, while taking it back, you kind of add the transfer function, which is 1 over G. The branching point is the opposite. So taking it back, you multiply by what? G, which is this transfer function. So as it gets here, it becomes what? Rg. As it gets here, it becomes what? Rg. So our two outputs what? Remains what? The same. Our two output does what? Remain the same. Nothing changes in them. So this is for your branching point or your takeoff point. If you're taking your branching point in front, you multiply, you kind of add your this thing transfer function, which is what? 1 over this one that you crossed. Then for that of trying to take it backward, also try for this, try to take this backward using this same rule. You still see that you will get back the same thing. You get back the same output without everything you were going to be doing. If you take this back, since you're going to be multiplying by G, this will cancel out. You'll be having 1 here. Hence, confirming this, making this rule to be what? Correct. So you try to take this back, you see you'll be multiplying this by what? G. And if you multiply this by G, it becomes what? 1. Confirming the rule. So this is for your branching points. The fifth rule is that you can interchange your summing points. And your summing points are what? Interchangeably. They are interchangeable. You can interchange them. So let's say that this is our input and here's another input coming into this. Okay, at this place we have R minus what? X. Now let's call here B. When this adds, you have what? R minus X plus what? B. If you interchange, then you have this. As you can see, our R still remains, it's still the incoming signal, but that came the feedback signal is what is actually interchanging with the summing points. So you can see here when we are done with, you have R plus B, and when it crosses here we have R plus B minus X, rhyming with this. Now I would like to say that say this, that why interchanging? make sure that your sign, or the main part sign, which is this part, this is the main part, make sure that is not attached to any minus sign, because you can try it, you can't interchange this and it will still give you the same thing. It will give you a different answer altogether. So while interchanging, make sure that you're having plus along this part. Every other part can change sign. This part, this part, this part, this part, this part, this part can change sign. But so long this is the main part, let here not be what? Minus. Let it not be minus. That's only when you can successfully interchange it without having any issue. Now another rule again is that of the transfer function, eliminating what? Transfer function. Now this is a popular one. When you have, let's say, plus and minus, can be a minus or plus, whatever sign that is being given to you, it still follows the normal algebraic pattern. So let's say that here is our R, here will be our E, here will be our C, which is our output, here will be our B. So this transfer function can be reduced to G over 1 plus G H C and what? R. You see, in this case we don't know what C is, but this is how you can still represent your this. So no, whatever your R is, when it multiplies this is what your output will then be. Your output will then be R multiplied by everything here to give you this. And this is how it is being represented as. It has been derived in one of my video, so I will advise that you check it out. I would also like to say that the reason why this is plus is because here is minus. If here changes to plus, here also changes to what? Minus. But if here is minus, what is being affected is one on top. And when it is plus, here is plus. But when here is plus, here should be minus. And when here is minus, here should be what? Plus. So that's all for the rules. Thank you and God bless you. Please subscribe to the channel and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.